When the outlaws of Islam, the Khawarij, murder, when they plunder, when they exploit children, and reject the equality of women before God, they abuse Islam. When the Khawarij persecute minorities, when they deny freedom of religion, they abuse Islam. Islam teaches that all humanity is equal in dignity. There is no distinction among different nations or religions or races. The Quran forbids coercion in religion. Every citizen is guaranteed the state's protection for their lives, families, properties, honor, privacy, and freedom of religion and thought. Muslims believe in the divine origins of the Bible and the Torah.
Okay, congratulations. I would like to wish you a very good stay here in Jordan. We're
from the United States. We live in San Diego, California, and we are here on our honeymoon. It's our first time to Jordan, and we're so happy to be here. Visiting Petra has been a dream.
All media, probably around the world as well.
اليوم دخل السائح رقم 1,000,000 على محمية البتراء الأثرية، أو اشترى التذكرة، لحد الآن ما دخل. طبعا احنا بنحتفل مش فقط بالسائح ال1,000,000، نحتفل بال1,000,000 سائح اللي دخلوا البتراء، وكل واحد منهم بالنسبة لنا مهم. إن شاء الله إنه تستمر ازدياد أعداد السياح حتى نهاية هذا العام، ونوصل تقريبا 1,100,000 سائح. طبعا لازم نرتقي بمستوى الخدمات المتقدمة بالموضع، نزيد الغرف الفندقية ونحافظ على الموقع الأثري. هلا هي جهود تشاركية تراكمية، القطاع السياحي بشكل عام وسمعة الأردن خارجيا، والحمد لله الوضع المستقر في المنطقة بشكل عام.
Congratulations, Petra! Nice to be here!
Herzlichen Glückwunsch, Petra!
Cześć, wielkie gratulacje dla Petry w związku z milionowym gościem. Pozdrowienia z Polski. Cześć!
Felicitări, Petra!
Parabéns, Petra!
أبداها بالرب العالي، خلاق الأول وهلا بك يا هلا يا حليفي يا ولد. الله يمسيكم بالخير ضيوف النعم حلية، الله يمسيكم بالخير ويزيدكم ثاني ميسية. وهلا وهلا بك يا هلا يا حليفي يا ولد، هلا وهلا بك يا هلا يا حليفي يا ولد. يوم اني قررت الجيه، لعين عيون معذبنا العود اقوله جينيه. وهلا وهلا بك يا هلا يا حليفي يا ولد. غرتات الزغاري طقن ثلاثي سوية، اللي مزق رثل الغالي لسوي بيه جينية. وهلا وهلا بك يا هلا يا حليفي يا ولد. أعطونا الخمس من ايديكم، عشتوا يا رياض النشمية، يا ربوعي كلكم نشامة تردوا عالنار وهي حية. وهلا وهلا بك يا هلا يا حليفي يا ولد. هب الهبوب وتنسم جيناكم يا الله قسم، هب الهبوب وتنسم جيناكم يا الله قسم. وهلا وهلا بك يا هلا يا حليفي يا ولد، هلا وهلا بك يا هلا يا حليفي يا ولد.
Situated in present-day Jordan and hidden amidst nearly impenetrable mountains to the east of the valley connecting the Gulf of Aqaba and the Dead Sea, stands the ancient city of Petra. Petra is a treasure from antiquity, hidden behind a barrier of rugged mountains, boasting incomparable scenes that make it one of the most majestic and imposing ancient sites still standing. The rock-carved rose-red city of Petra is full of mysterious charm. The first major monument that one comes to when entering Petra is the obelisk tomb and Bab as-Sik triclinium. The most intriguing part of this structure is its interesting mixture of Egyptian, Greek, and Nabatean-style architecture. Actually, it is two separate monuments stacked on top of each other. A modern gravel road, with one side for horses and the other for pedestrians, runs alongside the Wadi Musa, which is dry most of the year, but flows with water in the winter. Unlike the famous rose-red hue of the rest of Petra, the Bab as-Sik is mostly white rock with subtle earth tones of browns and beiges. The Sik, which means the shaft, is a dark, narrow gorge that was carved not by human hands, but by tectonic forces during a long-ago earthquake. Ranging from 50 meters wide to only about 5, the Sikh follows a meandering 1.25 kilometer path, bounded by walls about 100 meters tall. The entrance to the Sikh was originally marked by an ornamental arch. It collapsed in 1896, but its decorated abutments have survived. The Sikh is not technically a gorge, as it was formed not by erosion, but tectonic forces, which caused the rock to split dramatically in half. It was only then that the waters of the Wadi Musa flowed in, and the winds blew through the newly formed gap, gradually rounding the sharp edges into smooth curves. Petra is without doubt Jordan's most valuable treasure and greatest tourist attraction. It is a vast, unique city, carved into the sheer rock face by the Nabateans, an industrious Arab people who settled here more than 2,000 years ago, turning it into an important junction for the silk, spice, and other trade routes that link China, India, and southern Arabia with Egypt, Syria, Greece, and Rome. Along the way are some small niches, shrines, and carvings that merit investigation. And running along the length of the Sikh are water channels carved by the Nabateans to provide water to the city of Petra. Anticipation builds as the walk continues, and the end of the Sikh is a dramatic moment, planned that way by the Nabateans to impress their visitors. Here, protected from invasion by nature's unyielding ramparts, a culture grew from a small group of hunter-gatherers into a sophisticated city of about 20,000 inhabitants. Over the years, they learned to harvest water from the site's natural springs, the winter snowfall, and summer showers. They built aqueducts through the mountain in order to carry more water from distant springs. The gorge narrows, and the soft curves of the Sikh frame a sunlit strip of an extraordinary sight. The treasury, or Al-Khazneh. It is an awe-inspiring experience. A massive facade 30 meters wide and 43 meters high, carved out of the sheer, dusky pink rock face and dwarfing everything around it. It was carved in the early 1st century as the tomb of an important Nabatean king and represents the engineering genius of these ancient people. The complete name of the monument in Arabic is Khaznet Pharaoun, or Treasury of the Pharaoh. Popular myth claims that the pharaoh who drove Moses out of Egypt stored his wealth in the Khazneh, specifically in the urn that sits at the top of the building. The purpose of the treasury remains something of a mystery. One thing that is fairly certain, however, is that it was not a treasury. In reality, the treasury is generally believed to be a temple or a royal tomb, though neither conclusion is certain. Petra's magnificent temples and tombs are like no other religious buildings in the world, and the surrounding rugged landscape dotted with historical sites is a hiker's paradise. Petra has been a city of great religious significance since ancient times. First, it has a number of connections with the Old Testament. The nearby Ain Musa, Spring of Moses, is believed to be where the prophet Moses struck a rock with his staff to extract water. And Aaron is said to have died in the Petra area and been buried atop Jabal Harun, Mount Aaron. Later, the Nabateans built a city packed with tombs, temples, sanctuaries, and altars to their gods. Finally, in its final years, Petra was the home of at least one Byzantine church. This dramatic history and Petra's fascinating sights awe modern visitors, up to 3,000 of whom visit the site every day. One thing that is certain is that the Treasury Monument was built to impress. It is located in such a way that it grabs the attention of every visitor that enters the city and excites everyone who glimpses it for the first time. The central figure on the upper level tholos may be the fertility goddess of Petra, Al-Uza. In the Greco-Roman world, as well as in the Parthian East, people have always accorded the gods a human form. The Nabateans, on the other hand, represented their gods in the form of stelae. These stelae could take the form of rocks set upon end, blocks or shapes carved into a stone wall, or elaborately carved square djinn blocks set up at the entrance to their cities. The water and the protection guaranteed by the Petra Mountains attracted passing caravans in need of a place to rest and restock. Inside, a colossal doorway dominates the outer court and leads to an inner chamber of 12 square meters. At the back of the chamber is a sanctuary with an ablution basin, suggesting that the treasury was a temple or some other kind of holy place. After viewing the treasury, visitors come next to the Street of Facades, which is lined with tall, impressive tombs, with large facades or false faces on their fronts. The Nabateans were influenced by the Assyrians, as can be seen in the several tomb facades that still display crow-step battlements near the top of the facade. The name Petra, which means rock in Greek and Latin, derived from the word Petrae, is actually a modern name for the place. This is because the city was carved from the friable sandstone cliffs of the area. The rocks take on a multitude of hues, ranging from cream to orange to red and dark brown. Layers of these rocks form whorls of colors which were incorporated into the Nabatean architecture. Today, some of the intricate facades sculpted into the sandstone cliffs of the area can still be seen, along with other remarkably preserved structures and monuments left behind by this fascinating civilization. This monument was actually carved from the rock and cliff face by the Nabateans in the early 1st century AD, and only later modified by the Romans, shortly after their annexation of the kingdom. Petra's theatre was built in the 1st century AD. It is quite large, with a seating capacity of over 6,000 people. The theatre's 45 rows of seats are divided horizontally by 2 dios amara. Its cavea faces north and east to keep the sun out of the spectators' eyes. Above the cave are numerous tomb fronts that were destroyed to make way for the theater's upper tiers of seating, indicating how keen the people of Petra were to have a theater. It is not known when exactly Petra was built, but evidence suggests that settlements had begun in and around Petra during the 18th dynasty of Egypt, between 1550 and 1292 BCE, and it is mentioned in the Bible as the cleft in the rock. The city began to prosper as the capital of the Nabatean Empire from the 1st century BC, and grew rich through trade in frankincense and myrrh, along with spices from Yemen. During this period, it assumed the aspect of a Hellenistic city. In 106 CE, when Cornelius Palma was governor of Syria, that part of Arabia under the rule of Petra was absorbed into the Roman Empire as part of Arabia Petrae, of which Petra became the capital. The native dynasty came to an end, but the city continued to flourish. A century later, in the time of Alexander Severus, when the city was at the height of its splendor, the issue of coinage came to an end. There was no more building of sumptuous tombs, owing apparently to some sudden catastrophe, such as an invasion by a Neo-Persian power under the Sassanid Empire. Meanwhile, as Palmyra grew in importance and attracted the Arabian trade away from Petra, the latter declined. It seems, however, to have lingered as a religious center. A large earthquake in 363 AD destroyed much of the city. Many buildings were never rebuilt after this, although not long after the event, Petra was designated the seat of a Byzantine bishopric. However, the earthquake combined with changes in trade routes eventually led to the decline of the city, which was ultimately abandoned. By the middle of the 7th century, Petra appears to have been largely deserted, and it was then forgotten by all except local Bedouin. In 1812, a Swiss explorer named Johannes Burckhardt set out to rediscover Petra. He dressed up as an Arab and convinced his Bedouin guide to take him to the lost city. After this, Petra became increasingly known in the West as a fascinating and beautiful ancient city, and it began attracting visitors, as it continues to do to this day. Petra is also known as the Rose Red City, a name it gets from the marvelous color of the rock from which many of the city's structures were carved. In addition to the magnificent remains of the Nabatean city, humans have settled and used the land around Petra for over 10,000 years, making it a place where great natural, cultural, archaeological, and geological features merge. The main steps to the high place of sacrifice start just before the amphitheater. The high place is called thus because it is located at the very top of a mountain. The only way to reach the high place is on foot, and visitors must climb some 800 steps to reach the top. Located below the high place of sacrifice on a level area are two obelisks about 7 meters tall. They are cut from the bedrock and stand 30 meters apart on a perfect east-west alignment. The function of these obelisks is not known, although they are thought to represent the two main male and female Nabatean deities, Dushara and Al-Uzza. The lion fountain is located in close proximity to the garden temple, indicating that it was also part of the Nabatean water system in this area. The fountain is carved into the rock face, and the flow of water was channeled in such a way that it poured out through the lion's mouth into the basin below, providing refreshment for worshippers en route to the high place of sacrifice. Located in Wadi Faraza, adjacent to the Roman soldier tomb, the garden temple's function is as yet uncertain. Very likely it did not function as a tomb, since there are no burial niches or triclinium. The Roman soldier tomb gets its name from the carved figure of a Roman soldier in one of the 3 niches in the tomb's facade. In fact, the carved figure is the only Roman quality of the tomb. The architecture and style of the monument is not Roman and can be dated to the first half of the 1st century AD. This microcosm of human history takes the visitor on a trip through time, as far back as 10,000 years. Visitors will be dazzled not only by the historical grandeur, but also by the natural beauty created by the effects of the sun, wind, and weather on the site's colorful stone. What is even more incredible is that excavations continue in the area, and it is believed that most of Petra still lies beneath the sand. Named for its features reminiscent of Italian Renaissance architecture, the Renaissance tomb has a beautiful arched doorway that is topped with 3 urns. The tomb's facade is so similar to that of the Sextius Florentinus tomb that it is believed they were carved at the same time, in the 2nd century AD. The colonnaded street runs through the center of Petra, with many unexcavated sites on either side. This Roman paved road was the main street running through an important commercial section of the city, and today the remains of these buildings can be seen on either side of the street. The visible stretch of the colonnaded street extends from the Niphium to the Temenos Gate. This area was once filled with markets and shops. Evidence suggests that this was a popular area well into the 6th century. The Great Temple Complex represents one of the major archaeological and architectural components of central Petra. Estimated to cover an area of 7,000 square meters, the Great Temple is 28 meters wide and 40 meters long. The style and quality of the temple's elaborate floral friezes and limestone capitals suggest that the sanctuary was constructed around the end of the 1st century BC by the Nabateans, who combined their native traditions with the classical spirit. The Great Temple was in use until some point in the late Byzantine period. As its name indicates, the structure is generally assumed to be a temple. If so, it was probably dedicated to the principal deity of Petra, Dushara. often associated with Zeus, Dushara, like the other Nabatean deities, was not represented graphically, but only symbolically. Evidence from excavations reveals the Hellenistic influences visible on various monuments. The Great Temple accommodates a theater in its center, suggesting that the temple may have had a civic as well as a religious function. An earthquake in 363 AD caused the temple's collapse. The complex consists of a lower temenos, accessed by steep staircases, and an upper temenos that contains the temple proper. A temenos, a concept frequently found in early Mediterranean religions, is a piece of land cut off and assigned as an official domain, especially to kings and chiefs, or a piece of land marked off from common uses and dedicated to a god, a sanctuary, holy grove, or holy precinct. The Blue Chapel is situated between the Petra Church and Ridge Church and is named after the 4 Turkish blue granite columns that were moved to Petra in the Nabatean era. Sometime in the 5th or 6th century AD, when the monument was converted to accommodate a residence and chapel for the Bishop of Petra, the columns with their bases and Nabatean capitals were moved to their present location. The Petra Church is a Byzantine church located a few hundred meters off the colonnaded street near the Temple of the Winged Lions. Built in the late 4th century AD, the Ridge Church is one of the earliest churches in Jordan. It was built on the north side of the city center with a 360-degree view of the central city. The Petra Church is currently being excavated and preserved. A protective tent covers the roofless walls. It is a 3-aisled basilica, about 26 meters by 15 meters, with 3 apses on the east end and 3 west portals. The materials used to construct the church, including the capitals, door jambs, and reliefs, must have come from the ruined monuments of the Nabatean and Roman periods. Each of the side aisles of Petra Church is paved with 70 square meters of remarkably preserved mosaics, whose subjects include a variety of animals, local, exotic, and mythological, and personifications of seasons, oceans, earth, and wisdom. Also surviving are significant remains of the nave's pavement, with marble and stone geometric designs. Petra boasts an amazing number of churches. Many old tombs were turned into churches or cathedrals, and many tombs later had crosses inscribed into their walls. Along with this, there are 3 churches built almost side by side. The Christian era at Petra came during the 3rd and 4th centuries, by which point many of the Nabatean people had emigrated elsewhere. After the Islamic conquest of 629 to 632, Christianity in Petra, as in most of Arabia, gave way to Islam. During the First Crusade, Petra was occupied by Baldwin I of the Kingdom of Jerusalem and formed the second fief of the barony of Al-Karak, in the lordship of Outre-Jourdain, with the title of Château de la Vallée de Moise, or Sela. It remained in the hands of the Franks until 1189. It is still a titular see of the Catholic Church. The Temple of the Winged Lions is a complex of related facilities, including a worship center, residential quarters, and workshops, a combination never before seen in Nabatean religious installations. Following the recovery of materials such as the eye idol and feline-decorated capitals, the temple is believed to have been dedicated to the goddess Alat, one of the 3 major pre-Islamic female deities. Alat is sometimes identified with the Greek goddess Aphrodite, though more often with Athena and Minerva. Her name also appears in the Quran. Marking the end of the colonnaded street, the Temenos Gate was probably constructed during the reign of the Emperor Trajan in the 2nd century AD as a ceremonial entrance to the sacred precinct of Qasr al-Bint Temple. This triple-arched gate with large wooden doors also served to separate the sacred precinct from the busy colonnaded street and its shops. The Temenos Gate is an example of the blending of different cultures. Standard Greco-Roman design is evident, as is the geometric motifs of Nabatean architecture. Qasr al-Bint, the main Nabatean temple of ancient Petra, is the only stone-built structure to have survived the area's frequent earthquakes, almost intact. Qasr al-Bint was built upon a raised podium, with monumental walls that were covered with marble and painted stucco. The masonry, craftsmanship, and ergonomics of its construction indicate that Qasr al-Bint was a very costly project. Opposite the theater, carved into the foot of the Al-Qubta mountain, are the so-called royal tombs. The royal tombs are 5 tombs known as royal because they are generally thought to be the burial place of Nabatean kings and dignitaries. Visitors to Petra will be approached by local people selling all kinds of goods, including little children selling beautiful multicolored rocks, women with beaded necklaces, and ubiquitous ancient coins. The coins are relics of dubious authenticity from Petra's past as a mint, where coins were produced. Another royal tomb is a silk tomb, remarkable for its extraordinary and brilliant coloring. The tomb displays an Assyrian crow-step facade and architectural features common in Nabatea and Petra. Scholars have suggested that wealthy Nabateans were mostly buried in 5 Nabatean burial cities, including 3 cities in the Sinai Negev, 1 in the Inner Kingdom, Petra, and 1 in Saudi Arabia. The Nabatean dead were thus transported to these cities for proper burial. Like other ancient civilizations in the Middle East, such as the Persian and Hebrew, the Nabateans were thought to have exposed their dead in high places so that their bodies could be picked clean by vultures. Only then would they be buried. The next large monument is the so-called Corinthian tomb, one of the most sadly eroded facades in Petra. Its name comes from Léon de Laborde on his visit in 1828, who deemed its columns and capitals to be of the Corinthian order. Tentatively identified as the tomb of Aratus IV, which would date it to the 1st century AD, it represents an intermediary phase between the ornate decoration of the Kasne and the stark simplicity of Aldair. Resembling a Roman palace, the palace tomb has one of the largest facades in Petra, measuring 49 meters wide. It was the most ambitious of the royal tombs. When the builders ran out of the rock to carve, they built the top of the facade. The ground floor design of the palace tomb does not correspond to the design of the 2 stories above it, and most of the top story had to be built in masonry rather than carved out of the sandstone, as with the rest of the building, although much of the masonry since collapsed, making it impossible to know its original height. Hellenistic and Roman architectural features suggest that the palace tomb may have been the tomb of Petra's last king, Rabel II, before the Nabateans accepted Roman domination in 106 AD. The final small tomb of Sextius Florentinus can be dated to between 126 and 130 AD by a Latin inscription over the doorway, stating that the tomb was constructed for Sextius, Roman governor of the province of Arabia, by his son upon his father's special request. The tomb of Sextius Florentinus combines Nabatean and Hellenistic architectural elements. The inhabitants of Petra supported themselves by agriculture and raising livestock. They built terraces, the walls of which are still to be found in what is now desert, in order to cultivate vines and olive trees. They also bred camels, sheep, goats, and horses. Climate and conditions, including rainfall, did not differ significantly from today, but the Nabateans were extremely skilled in water management, storing this precious resource in great rock-cut cisterns, or channeling the plentiful natural supply from its source, Uyan Mosa, Mosa Springs, some kilometers away to the heart of the city. Remains of pipes, channels, and cisterns can still be seen throughout Petra. Although not as dry as at present, the area occupied by the Nabateans was still a desert and required special systems for agriculture. One system was to contour an area of land into a shallow funnel and to plant a single fruit tree in the middle. Before the rainy season, which could easily consist of only 1 or 2 rain events, the area around the tree was broken up. When the rain came, all the water which collected in the funnel would flow down toward the fruit tree and sink into the ground. The ground, which was largely loess, would seal up when it got wet and retain the water. At the top of another of the mountains surrounding Petra stands one of the most prodigious of all the facades, Ad-Deir, the monastery. Its name, like that of the treasury, is a misnomer, relating to its Christian use in the 4th or 5th centuries, when crosses were incised on the back wall of an alcove in the interior, and on some of the rondels of the Doric frieze. The design is clearly modeled on the treasury, with its 2 levels and the circular tholos between a broken pediment. But it is much larger and less elaborately decorated, and its niches contain no statues. In place of the treasury's floral and foliate motifs, The monastery has a simple Doric frieze and plain Nabatean capitals. Al-Dair was carved from the mountainside in the mid-1st century AD and was an extremely important site of pilgrimage. In fact, it is believed, from an inscription nearby, that this monument was a triclinium, possibly used for banquets, in honor of the deified king Obadas I. The monument was also reused during the Byzantine period in the 5th century AD as a church, hence the name monastery. Little is known of Nabatean domestic architecture. In Petra there were certainly houses carved, like the tombs, into the rock. Excavations have also revealed houses built of limestone blocks, with roofs made of stone slabs supported by arches. Petra lies on the slope of Mount Hor in a basin among the mountains, which form the eastern flank of Arabah, the valley of the Wadi Arabah that runs from the Dead Sea to the Gulf of Aqaba. It is about 250 kilometers from Amman, the capital of Jordan. Around the Dair Plateau there are many spectacular views of deep gorges and the Wadi Arabah. Roman historian Pliny the Elder identified Petra as the capital of the Nabateans, Aramaic-speaking Semites, and the center of their caravan trade. Enclosed by towering rocks and watered by a perennial stream, Petra not only possessed the advantages of a fortress, but controlled the main commercial routes which passed through it to Gaza in the west, to Basra and Damascus in the north, to Aqaba and other spots in the Red Sea, and across the desert to the Persian Gulf. Excavations have demonstrated that it was the ability of the Nabateans to control the water supply that led to the rise of the desert city, creating an artificial oasis. The phenomenal Nabatean city of Petra was half built and half carved into the rock, at the interior of a circle of mountains which is riddled with corridors and gorges. One of the world's most famous archaeological sites, where ancient Eastern traditions blend with Hellenistic architecture, Petra was designated a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 1985.
The Dead Sea was super salty, like you don't want to get it in your eyes. You don't really, if you're a girl, you don't really want to shave your legs right before going in because it will sting. It feels like pure salt and it just looks like a normal sea, but then you get in it and you just float like a floaty, like a buoy in the sea. It's really crazy. Hi guys, welcome to Jerash. Today we're visiting an archaeological site. Come and visit with us. Definitely feeling much more human today. We took our flight from Paris on Friday at 7:40 p.m. and we arrived in Amman at 5 a.m. Saturday morning, and I kind of forgot to sleep, so yesterday I was dead. Luckily we went to the Dead Sea. Ho ho ho.
Lame.
This archaeological site that we're on is huge. It's going to take all day to walk around it, I think. Hello, welcome to Merhaba. Hey guys, so today we're driving all the way from Amman down to Petra, 6 hours on the King's Highway. We're just gonna take our time, but we're stopping off in some exciting places along the way. We just got rained out of the castle in Karak, so I was not expecting that. I didn't even pack a raincoat for this trip. I was like, I'm going to the desert, it's gonna be hot, like no such thing as rain in Jordan, but apparently yes. Hey guys, how tourist do I look right now? We are just headed to Petra. Yes, so excited. Don't want to get my expectations too high, but we're well aware that this could be the highlight of the trip. Do advise that you just take sandwiches or a picnic or this kind of thing. So we didn't have the time to go to a supermarket last night, so our plan is that we just stocked up on the free breakfast that we had this morning. So we had like bacon, eggs, hash browns, pancakes, pastries, like also like we fueled up to the max, and we've got a few snacks with us, and we're just hoping that it's going to be so hot that we won't really have a huge appetite anyway, and that the kind of snacky stuff will just suffice. Honestly, it's hard to believe that we're here. It really just feels like the scene of a movie. It just feels like I've just never seen anything like this, with the desert and the palm trees and the, I don't know, just everything, the way people are dressed. I feel like I've been transported to a different world. Quick funny culture shock so far, or culture kind of things that I've picked up on. So the people in Jordan are extremely friendly and extremely welcoming. When you're driving in Jordan, there are speed bumps everywhere.
يا صيته هذه منازلنا العامي يوم المطر جانا يا صيته هذه منازلنا العامي يوم المطر جانا من عقب حنا وقرايبنا اليوم يا بعد ممشانا من عقب حنا وقرايبنا اليوم يا بعد ممشانا بفراقنا ما توادعنا بالقلب يا حر فرقانا بفراقنا